Singapore reports 21 new Covid-19 community cases today, with 11 of the infections currently unlinked. Deferred again, the air travel bubble between Singapore and Hong Kong will not be taking off next Wednesday. And looking beyond the pandemic, Singapore's Emerging Stronger Task Force makes key recommendations for a post-Covid-19 world. It's 5:30 p.m. here in Singapore. You're watching The Big Story. I'm Haryanto Diman, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. Now subscribe to the Straits Times channel by hitting the red button below. For the 7th straight day, the number of new Covid-19 cases in the community are in the double digits, with 21 confirmed today. The Health Ministry said 10 are connected to previous cases, while 11 are currently unlinked. Of the new local infections, 6 had already been placed on quarantine. 7 imported cases were also reported today, with 2 being returning Singaporeans or PRs. Now, more details will be released tonight. Given the recent increase in unlinked cases here, it's perhaps not surprising that the Singapore-Hong Kong air travel bubble will not be going ahead. Transport Minister S. Iswaran and his Hong Kong counterpart Edward Yao this morning agreed that the flights originally planned for May 26th will be deferred. An update will be made on or before the end of Singapore's tightened measures on June 13th. Now, to recap, both cities had said that the air travel bubble will be suspended when the 7-day moving average of unlinked community cases in either city is more than 5. Now, as of yesterday, the tally in Singapore has gone up to almost 5. The previous travel bubble was suspended last November after an outbreak in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, Covid-19 testing is currently underway at White Sands Mall at Pasir Ris for all tenants and staff who have been working at the mall and the Giant outlet at Block 440 Pasir Ris Drive 4 since May 2nd. This special swabbing arrangement comes as some visitors to these venues have tested positive for the virus in the past 2 weeks. Testing is mandatory and will continue till tomorrow. Now, infectious diseases physician Dr. Ashok Kurup will join me now. He also chairs the Academy of Medicine's chapter on infectious disease physicians. Welcome back, Doctor. Now, Doctor, since we last spoke 2 weeks ago, new large community classes have emerged with a concerning number of unlinked cases. Singapore has gone into phase 2 heightened alert and work from home is once again the default. So, Doctor, what's your view of the current situation? Are we in any danger of a new wave of infections?
Yeah, thanks, Hiranto. Thanks for having me. So I'm so sad about the travel bubble that got burst. So it's just a reflection of the times that we live in right now. And I think the virus has evolved and it has upped its game. So now we have to keep up with the virus because it's exploiting all of our weak links. And yes, we might end up getting into a pickle soon if we also don't up our own game. So I think we are better prepared this time, hopefully, compared to all first wave last year. We have better resources available. We have better tracing, contact tracing, better testing facilities. And now we have these added measures from last night. So there's no dining in is out. There is no minimal social interactions and of schools. So, but I think in the context of all these things, vaccination is also extremely key. So we have to kind of see how well our measures will take us. And I'm not sure that we can draw any specific timelines as to how successful these measures will be. I think we'll have to kind of watch very carefully on these things.
Right. Doctor, of course, like you mentioned, it's different situation that we're in right now. This time round, of course, we are battling as well the B1617 variant, which experts have claimed to be more transmissible. If I may ask, Doctor, how do you think the situation will unfold from now till the end of tightened measures on June 13th?
Yeah. So that's a good question. You see, It depends. The virus is good in picking up our weak links, and maybe, um, to put it simply, I think it depends on at least two big factors. One is whether it will uncover more weak links. We, we may find out that we have some other place where we have not really looked into, and that might uncover some more problems, clusters, and this might come to light in the ensuing days or weeks. That will be one. And the second one will be the context of household um, transmission, because as you know, how things played out in the first wave, we do know historically that in the context of transmission, it's very easy in larger households, in smaller, so it's quite diverse in the context of Singapore. Many people may live in, sometimes crowded places and many people are together, etc. So if that household transmission were to continue, I think we are not going to get an easy run on this one. So I think it's going to be the journey that gets us there rather than certain timelines. So,
Right. Doctor, early on as well, you talk about vaccinations being important. And of course, it is all the more important now, especially that as many people get vaccinated as possible. Now, Singapore is studying the possibility of spacing out the time between the two vaccine doses so that more can receive the first dose. We know that several countries have opted for this approach. Doctor, help us understand, how will these still give the best protection against the virus? What's the science behind spacing out the two doses?
well, I think that in the context when we can't get enough vaccine for everybody, we will have to do these kinds of measures for perhaps a variety of reasons. One, we can get access to more people who have not got. And number two, we can boost their immune response, particularly those who are at risk. And perhaps a third reason is that there has been some science, maybe not a lot of science, but science with regards to maybe the Pfizer vaccine. There's been some data to suggest that if you were to delay the second shot by even as long as 12 weeks, and there's been a study in the UK in this regard, and actually there were better immune responses. So there's also been analogies drawn from other vaccines which have also done similar, boosters after a longer space of time rather than. So I think that we probably, in a good way, we are probably not going to see any harm. But importantly, we're going to get the vaccine across to as many people as possible. So I think it's actually a good idea. And my personal observation is that as we care for a lot of the current patients, the ones who are vaccinated are pretty much asymptomatic or and I think it's a testament to the efficacy of the vaccine, maybe not so much in preventing the infection in itself, but the fact that you don't fall sick. It's very obvious to me that the ones who do not get the vaccine are much worse off. So it's quite telling. Please go out and get the vaccine.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kurup, for setting aside time this evening. I've been speaking with Dr. Ashok Kurup, infectious diseases physician with Mount Elizabeth Hospital. A vision of a post-Covid-19 Singapore. The Emerging Stronger Task Force today revealed its top recommendations for transformation of businesses and people. National Development Minister Desmond Lee, who co-chairs the task force, said that their work focused on a pivot to action.
And so we identified two overarching themes that would potentially underpin Singapore's future economy post-COVID. And the first is for Singapore that is connected to the world, connected to each other, connected within industry, connected between government, people, private sector, and so on. Connected physically, but also digitally. And the second overarching theme was for a Singapore that is more sustainable for our environment, for our economy, and for our people and our society.
Joining me now is Singapore editor Zakir Hussain. Welcome to the show, Zakir. Zakir, the Emerging Stronger Task Forces report is 118 pages long, detailing how Singapore can come out from the pandemic and thrive in a post-COVID-19 world. What stood out for you the most, and what are the main takeaways from the report?
I think in a way, the report is not a complete surprise to those of us who have been following this issue for some time. And I think what was refreshing is that a lot of the initiatives that have come about as a result, for instance, how to encourage safe visitor experiences, how to work with private sectors and the people sector in terms of coming up with new ideas or initiatives. Some of these have come out, in the response to the pandemic over the past few months. What was refreshing, I thought, was the report actually coming out and saying this is maybe the new way forward for Singapore, where public agencies cannot and do not have all the wisdom. They do need to tap on and collaborate with large firms, with small firms, with private sector players, in jointly coming up with solutions to take Singapore forward and to take the economy forward. And they're talking about institutionalizing this approach through what they call alliances for action, and basically making this, a formal way of kind of going forward.
And also, one part of the recommendations as well, Zakir, is focused on workers.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? And as the economy and businesses transform, what does it mean for workers, who have to adopt new skills and new roles even?
Yeah, so I think it is going to be a much more challenging landscape for workers. And I think one key recommendation is, there's this constant need to upskill and reskill workers to take on new roles, right? Whether it's in the digital economy or in a completely different sector. And I think the task force members, were confident that the experience of how workers responded by and large in the pandemic helped. For instance, those in tourism, those in aviation had to pivot quite dramatically to completely new sectors, like healthcare. And at the same time, I think it also highlighted the role that companies have in this regard. So one of the recommendations is for, to groom large local enterprises, but also queen bee companies that are leading in the industry, to not just focus on the short term or narrow, focus just on the company's growth, but to focus on growing the ecosystem and the sector as well. And I think there was a call for them to be more involved in training workers, not just for the larger sector, but for the Singapore economy as a whole.
Right.
And so I think if, it's sort of this nudge to basically, to companies as well as to workers, to kind of work together and think about, pivoting to new sectors as the economy, as the jobs landscape becomes a bit more volatile.
Right. Of course, Zak, this report is, there are more to come in the future, right? With the report that comes out today. Well, thank you so much, Zak, for clarifying with us, and of course for sharing with us a bit more on this report. And that was Straits Times' Singapore editor Zakir Hussain. Now you can read more on the Emerging Stronger Task Forces report on straitstimes.com. In other news, a Singaporean businessman linked to the alleged fraud of over $1 billion was charged with 7 more counts of cheating today. The latest charges involved Ng Yew Chi allegedly cheating investors of over $23 million in nickel deals that never took place. Ng now faces a total of 18 charges and is expected to return to court on June 28th. Looking overseas, Indonesian ride-hailing and e-commerce startups Gojek and Tokopedia are merging to form a technology giant GoTo. Sources familiar with the situation earlier said the companies were seeking a US $18 billion merger, but neither firm confirmed a valuation for the merged group. Gojek and Tokopedia have been in discussions for a possible merger since late December, after Gojek's negotiations with rival Grab Holdings collapsed. The event held in Florida. Another winner was Miss Myanmar, who clinched the award for Best National Costume. Appearing on stage, she held up a placard that said, "Pray for Myanmar," urging the world to speak out against the military coup that overthrew the elected government and led to months of deadly protests. Those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos,